All right, happy Wednesday evening. It's Bill Maharis, and next to me I got Coach Doug Cook with me. We are live on Pressbox Overtime. This is mic'd up inside the Pressbox, and tonight we're going to talk about college football just like we did last week. Hopefully you caught my show last night with Chris Bonanno. We talked about the 10 teams, 10 out of 16 teams. Actually, I'll go one better than that. 10 out of 14 teams in Brevard County that play in the FHSAA because Cocoa Beach and Space Coast do not. So 10 out of 14 teams that were eligible for the playoffs made the playoffs, and Viera was probably just one or two spots behind. So I'm not sure if there's any other counties that can say 80 to 85% of their teams made the playoffs, but hopefully you'll catch that show. Doug and I are going to try to come on every Wednesday, and hopefully I'll get Chris every Monday or Tuesday while we're in the thick of the playoffs. Before I get started, though, I want to go over two quick things. One that Doug knows or is familiar with as well as I am, both as an administrator at the high school level and as a parent. But today I had the great honor to substitute teach at Holy Trinity. Most of you all that know me, I taught math at middle school. This was middle school science. So I told the kids, feel free if they have any questions whatsoever, wait till their teacher comes back because I do not know science. But every day at Holy Trinity, they have an assembly for 15 or 20 minutes, which is kind of cool. All the kids go in there and some type of presentation. Today was early signing. And they had three young ladies, very impressive. Very impressive. One's going to play softball at Tampa. One's going to run track at Kansas. And one's going to run track at Notre Dame. So I mentioned Doug because Doug, like me as an administrator, even though I was at the middle school level as a county AD, I took pride in trying to go to as many of those as I could, especially in February. Doug, I'm guessing you went to about 5 as a dad to watch your kids sign for athletic scholarships. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly 5. Yeah, I was blessed to have some great kids and great athletes, man.
Yeah,
it's a blessing.
Yeah, and again, and really, I paid attention to those parents today because I just know what a feeling that is. Remembering when my son.
Well, you had a daughter. You had a daughter also that signed.
Yep. Ethan went to Jacksonville for 1 year, played ball before he got into the Air Force, and then Devin there. So that was pretty special. So I want to say hats off to Holy Trinity. And actually, I ran into Coach Brown this morning and reintroduced myself. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, and certainly wished him the best. But I told him that on our show last night that Chris and I both said we think MCC and Holy Trinity are going to meet in the second round, and whoever wins that game, I think, has got a real good chance of going to Tallahassee. So that's going to be interesting. Also, as a programming note, this Friday night at 7:30, Coach Cook and myself will be in the press box at O'Galley High School, calling the game, not live streaming, actually PA announcing, calling their round 1 game as they host Merritt Island. They defeated Merritt Island in the regular season 12-11. So we expect a great game. I was thrilled to get a text from Coach Ost today, Todd Ost, the athletic director. And so I'll be announcing. I got my sidekick over here that's going to be my spotter. So we're looking forward to some high school playoff. I think last year we did 1 or 2 games at Rockledge. I think we did Satellite. Yeah, we might have done Daytona Mainland. I can't remember, but always a pleasure, especially to be up there with my my sidekick. So we're looking forward to that. All right. So,
just hats off to you, Bill, for that. I mean, you've been to Bayside, I think, Cocoa Beach, Rockledge. Now you're going to O'Galley. That's great that you can help these schools out. And I don't know how you get all this time to do it. You're subbing, you're doing this, you're playing golf. I don't know how you have time to do all this. But hats off to you. And last night that was a great show you and Chris had, by the way.
Well, thanks. Yeah, Chris is very knowledgeable. He writes for the Hometown News. And just so you know, I've gotten to wherever I travel, I carry a microphone with me. So just in case somebody calls and I got to fill in, but it's a lot of fun.
You do a great job with it.
Well, thanks. And like I said, I'm looking forward to being with you on Friday. All right. So let's take a look at the college football, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Not really a big change. And again, it's only the second. We've got a lot of big games coming out, including this weekend. So it is kind of early, but you know what? It's always fun to just kind of look and see what's going on. So here's the top 25. Same 6: Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, and Oregon. You know, when I look at the printout, Louisville is the last team at number 11 that has only lost one game. Anything past that, starting with Oregon State, is a two losses, a couple with 3. So I really don't think we're going to go any farther down than that top 11. Anything stand out, Doug, when you look at that? Anybody, again, we got a lot of ball to play. I know you're a St. Nick fan. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Nick today too. I'm going to make a few changes in my top 4 that might surprise anybody. But what's your first thoughts as far as those top 6 and even past that, maybe down to number 8 that you think is still going to be around in January?
Well, I think the top 6 is pretty solid right now. I think Michigan may not make it. I'm not sure yet. And, what I like to do as a former football coach, I like to go back and break down film on YouTube, watch the games and break it down and see what's going on, as far as the strengths and weaknesses of the teams.
Right.
And, I'm thinking it's going to be Florida State, Georgia, or Alabama. And we'll talk about Nick later. Washington and maybe Ohio. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit. You and I we got a lot in common. There's 2 teams we agree on, and there's 2 conferences that we agree on. And we'll certainly talk about that later. You mentioned Michigan, and when I don't sub, I'm dialed in to Get Up in the Morning and First Take. And actually, Pat McAfee, I like his show too. So for about 6 hours, I plan my inside work schedule around those shows. But, they bring up Michigan, and they brought up a pretty good point. You don't know, you don't know how much noise that's out there is going to affect the team. But like somebody said, when it first came out, the next game they had was Michigan State, and, they plowed them into the dirt. So it gives you the feeling, that maybe it doesn't bother them. But one thing that really caught me was all of the athletic directors, from what I understand, all the athletic directors except for Michigan, but Coach Harbaugh was on the conference call with the Big Ten commissioner, because all the other schools are like, hey, you got to do something now. We don't need due process. We've got film. We've got this. And from what I understand, Harbaugh left the conference call. But another guy brought up a good point. So we're going to rush through this because these other teams maybe just don't want Michigan to be in the Final Four. So like one guy says, what happens if the commissioner comes out and says, I'm going to suspend you for 2 games? And then let's say when the investigation's over, it's this huge ordeal. Now what do you go back and say, oh, wait, I need to give you 3 more games? So, what are your thoughts? I on one thing, half the side is like, it's no big deal. The other half says, maybe not, but it is against the rules. Are you in favor of maybe doing something now? Or do you think it should run its course, even if it takes a year or 2?
Well, I think Harbaugh is a lot like Donald Trump. I think they're after Harbaugh, Everybody, like we talked about last week, everybody does what they did, but he just got caught. Yeah. I think they should just. It's not a major ordeal to me, because you still have to play the game. I say continue investigating and let this season play out. Don't hurt the kids, don't hurt the players. Just let it play out. Right. And if you need to suspend him to, show your position, then do it.
Yeah, and I kind of agree. I think some of it is because of Harbaugh. They they got ticked off because he didn't play ball with them, and they have already suspended him once. I know they say that we've got tape, but then you know what? If it's that cut and dry, then the NCAA needs to come out and put out something. So I find that interesting. But so far, I haven't seen where it's going to really, mess them up any. But so the top six hasn't really changed. And we're going to talk a little bit about their schedules. Let's look at the next 5, because like I said, once you get past number 11, which is Louisville, everybody's got 2 losses or more. So I don't think anybody outside of this 11 has a chance. I know you're a Bama fan. You got Mississippi with 1 loss. All these teams have 1 loss. You like one of them to jump up into that top 4 by the time everything's over?
I kind of like Lane Kiffin, He's done a heck of a job there. It's not easy to win at Ole Miss.
No.
And, he's a great offensive coach. And I don't know if his dad's still around, but his dad used to help him coach defense.
Was he in Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah, his dad, but a lot of NFL experience.
Right.
And his defense is pretty decent too. But he's got Georgia, and Georgia's so well coached, and they don't make many mistakes. Georgia would have to have a lot of turnovers, maybe interception or fumbles, and putting Ole Miss in a scoring position in order to lose that game. I'm a big Georgia fan as far as their talent. I was born in Georgia, but now that it's a blue state, I hate to say I was born in Georgia. I'm just glad I'm in Florida. But that's another topic. But Georgia's got some talent, man. I broke their film down the other day, and man, they can fly to that ball, man, on defense. Right, and that's what wins games for you. So
we were talking yesterday, probably when I was trying to fish my ball out of the palm fronds out there at Patrick Air Force Base. And we were talking about these top 5 or 6 teams. And, nobody has really crushed anybody. There's nobody. Everybody's had a close game. And that doesn't take anything away from anybody, because as you and I have talked, when you're in a Power 5 conference, look at us against 2-6 Arkansas this past week. Last year, we lost to Vanderbilt. When you're playing a Power 5 team each and every week, you're not going to win by 30 or 40 points. And we had that discussion, and we talked about Michigan. Michigan's got a real weak schedule. I mean, I think it's in the hundreds as far as the schedule. But you know what? They're kicking the rear end out of everybody. So they're doing what they're supposed to do. But we've circled back to Georgia. Georgia just seems to find a way to win. They've got that. You got Kirby Smart that, he's, if he's not at the, Mount Rushmore, he might be there in about 5 to 10 years. But they've got that championship caliber. They know how to win. They've got 2 in a row. And we talked about them yesterday, that at the end of the day, whether they start out slow against South Carolina, they played a really good Missouri team, they just find a way.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to do a show one day on coaching and what makes a great coach, what makes a winning coach. I spent 20 years in high school coaching, football, basketball, track, and being around other coaches. I'd go to coaches' meetings, and we hang out, we play golf or something, and some of the coaches, they just didn't put in the time necessary to be a champion. You know what I mean? Right. There's some traits there that I think sometimes we overlook. We're all experts. We're expert coaches, and we all think we know what we're talking about. But if you haven't coached and you're not in that coach's office preparing, or after you're getting your butt kicked, you're licking your wounds and all that stuff. If you're not doing all that, behind the scenes is so important. That would be a great show to do, as far as what are the characteristics of a championship coach. I mean, look at Sir Nick Saban. I have so much respect for him, and I know he's a winner. He's a champion.
Right.
And I'm not going to be surprised if he's not in that top 4 for the national championship.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we're at a good place where, you've got Ryan Day, you've got Kirby Smart, you've got Harbaugh, you got Norvell. I mean, you know what? You and I, and we'll talk a little bit later on about the Gators. You know what? Listen, hats off to Florida State. They got a guy. They went through some lean years. Last year, he had a pretty good year. This is year 4. And here he is, probably, in my mind, has the best path to the football playoff. So, what us Gators are kind of hoping for too. Let's just see what Billy does. But so you're exactly right. And I don't know a lot about Oregon's coach and Washington's coach, but hey, listen, they're doing something right out there. You're right. We've got some stout coaches out there that they're starting to separate themselves.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. And one thing also, being in the South, as compared to Washington, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State's got some good speed, but in the South, we've got some speed down here, man. Yeah. And you can't coach speed.
No. Well, and you know what? Right. Whenever we would play a Big Ten team in a bowl game, it was speed against size,
Right,
and whenever whenever we lost in a bowl game, it's because they just manhandled us on the line. So you're right. These conferences, they're kind of known for the style they play.
Yeah. Connor and I went up to see, my son Connor and I went up to see Michigan play Florida in a bowl game a couple of years ago in Georgia.
Was that an ugly one, if I remember?
Yeah. And Florida destroyed them, man.
Yeah.
Michigan looked like me running the ball, and Florida was just flying all over the place. You could when you're there physically, sitting in the stands, you can really see how the play breaks down. We were in the end zone, and you could see how the play breaks down.
Just watch,
and the difference in the athletic ability as far as speed is concerned. I'm not worried about size and all that. Right. I mean, Michigan was bigger. I mean, they were physical, but they just didn't have the speed. And Florida destroyed them in that bowl game.
It's funny. I saw something I was watching, and you see the combines, and the 4.4 and the 4.6 and the 4.7, and you're like, for me, that's never coached football. I'm like, what's the big deal? 4.6, 4. So somebody they showed something, and they had a couple guys running, and they had like a 4.7 guy against a 4.4 guy, which you're like, so what? But if the 4.4 guy is the receiver and the 4.7 guy is the defensive back, after about 10 or 15 yards, they were already 3 yards apart.
Right.
And look at it like that, you're like, wow, okay, now I see the difference between a 4.6 and a 4.9 or a 4.4. And like you, I love going to a game where I can sit high, and you can see, it's almost like that game we grew up with. The little magnetic football players on the board. You turn on the board and they all shake and start moving around the board. So that's what
most people. Like. Yeah, most people, fans, they're watching the quarterback, they're watching the receiver, they're watching the running back. Probably, a coach like me or other coaches, they're watching the scheme. What's the blocking scheme? How are the kids blocking defensively? How are they countering that play with their defense? So that's the way a coach thinks, because he's been in the coach's office breaking down films for hours and hours, and that's what you're looking at. Right. So it's kind of a different scenario there, but that's just the way my brain works.
Yeah. So you mentioned this earlier. So when I started the season, I had FSU, Georgia, USC. I thought they were going to run the table. I didn't do my research on Washington and Oregon and Utah. And I had Notre Dame. I thought, they were going to make it. So I've still got 2 out of 4. But here's my change. So I still like FSU. I think, and we're going to talk about FSU in a minute, I think they've got the easiest path. And I know, and our good friend Jimmy McKinney, if he's watching or is going to watch this later, he's a Florida State fan. He talks about rivalry, and I get that. Miami's not that strong. Florida
No.
is certainly not that strong. And sandwiched between the two of them, you got Northern Alabama. Yeah, I think they've got a pretty good road to. So I still have them, but I'm gonna tell you, the last couple of days, I jumped on the Cook wagon. I've got Bama ahead of Georgia a little bit. I think if they meet head to head, they're looking a little bit more consistent. We agree. I think it's going to be somebody out of the Big Ten. I'm leaning towards Michigan. If not, Ohio State. And I like the Pac-12. I kind of think Oregon, and I like Washington. I think Washington probably has a better team. But when I look back at that Oregon game where the coach is like, we're here to win, we're not going to kick any field goals. So there was I think 3 opportunities that he didn't kick a field goal because that's not what we came to do. Well, you would have won the game. So if they meet again, but I think we agree. I think FSU, I like Alabama, and Big 10 or Big 12. And I think that's kind of what you're leaning towards too.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're talking about Alabama, Nick Saban, let's face it, he's a legend. Great, probably he is the greatest college coach ever, right? Don't ever count him out, man. Don't count him out. I mean, and the talent, the LSU game, they destroyed LSU.
I thought LSU. I actually, and not to interrupt you, we talk about Newt Rockne and Ara Parsegan and you can't compare, and I kind of agree with that to some point. But when you look at today's game, when you look at the past 10 or 15 years, the talent level, guys that are 295 running a 4.7, quarterbacks that, we've got one here at Coco as a sophomore that's already ranked number 2 in the state. When you look at the caliber of teams, the number of teams, and the caliber of athletes that we have, I don't know, if Nick's not at the top, and again, no disrespect for all these other coaches before him. I just think with the way the game is now, and you can dominate like he has, I got to give hats off to Nick.
Oh, you got to. I mean, he's done an incredible job. It speaks for itself. I mean, if they could replay that Texas game, I'm sure they would win it. The quarterback for Alabama has improved every week. Right. He's just he's a phenomenal athlete.
And
he's scary.
You probably remember what he's improved since that game when Nick Saban pulled him. Him and said, "Hey, you're not going to start today." And he started 2 other guys, and everybody was like, "What are you doing?" And let me tell you, I think he found out that there is no I in team. And you're right, that young man has been playing some stout ball since that game when he had to watch it from the bench.
Hey, let's face it. It had to be something internal, right? I mean, he's a heck of a lot better athlete than the other quarterbacks he had in there against South Florida. He might have had an issue, big head or something, or just not being a team player or whatever. Something I don't know what it is, and it didn't get out of the locker room. So I'm sure there was something that we don't know about. Is the reason he pulled that kid, because man, that kid he's going to be something.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. So let's take a look at a couple of the big games this week. I'm not looking at all the top 10, top 20, but I'm just going to run down about five games that I picked out and see what you think. So we do have a rivalry game. Again, anything can happen with the rivalry. We got the Hurricanes going up to FSU. FSU is 14-point favorites. Doug, if you were going to have to put a quarter on the table, would you take Miami in the 14, or are you flying with the Seminoles?
Billy, when you get to this point in the season, 9 games in, these boys are looking for a national championship. They're looking to get into the playoffs. It is no nonsense right now. There's no nonsense. Right. And I can guarantee you these boys at Florida State Seminoles that are 9-0, they're going to wear Miami out. It's at home as well. It's not going to be pretty.
No, and I'm going to these next couple games, I'm going to put up some of the standings. You know, part of me likes the idea, like we're looking at the ACC right now, and the SEC is going to go to this next year. You know, there's not going to be an East and a West. It's just going to be, you know, so part of me likes that because let's face it, even as Gator fans, we knew those years that Florida was making the SEC championship game, we weren't one of the second best. It was always LSU and Alabama on the West side. So on one hand, I like it because you're going to get the two best teams, but part of me still likes that East-West and, you know, North-South, whatever. But like I say, as you're looking at the standings, Florida State's up there at the top. You got Louisville right behind them. I don't think we'll talk a little bit about, you know, Louisville. It's got a pretty good schedule. There's only like 4 teams I think that have a strong schedule, but I'm like you. I like FSU in that one, and I don't think they're going to have any problem. The next one we got number 3 Michigan at Penn State. Michigan is a 4.5-point favorite at Penn State. I love Coach Franklin. I just think he's done a great job. I think he went from Vanderbilt to Penn State. I almost think this whole thing with Jim Harbaugh is maybe making them stronger, you know, versus stuff in the locker room messing with their head. But I like Penn State, but I don't think they're going to beat Michigan even at home.
Well, you know, Franklin, he's not a Joe Paterno, but he's always in the top 10, it seems like.
Yeah.
He, and it's at Penn State. So Michigan's going to have to play flawless ball in order to win that game.
I agree. They got to play a good game. You know, like I say, Penn State is just, you know, they're on the wrong side. If they're on the west side, you know, they might. Yeah. But when you got Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State both in the East, you know. But I'm like you. Can you tell? Is it a night game? You got that on your screen?
12 o'clock. Noon.
Oh, noon. Okay. All right. Because I was going to say, if it's a night game and they're doing a whiteout, maybe, but, you know, but yeah, I'm like you. I don't think we got Alabama at Kentucky. Alabama's still a 10.5-point favorite. I don't listen. I love Coach Stoops. What a great job he's done at a basketball school. Don't tell him I said that.
Yeah. He has.
You know, Kentucky is at 6-3. Alabama, of course, 8-1. I think Alabama. So I'm looking at they got Kentucky, Chattanooga, and Auburn. They got a pretty good race to Atlanta, I think.
Yeah, Alabama. You know, they have matured as a team, and you know we talked about the quarterback that's gotten better every week. Right. I think they're smelling a SEC championship. You know, I think these boys are fired up. So I'd have to go with Alabama.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think so. The next one I see is number 18, Utah at number 5, Washington. And again, I've got it up on the screen. They're the same way. There's no divisions. Washington leads the pack. Utah's down there at 7-2. You know, I like Utah. I just think we're looking at Washington has they're one of 4 teams that have a strong schedule. They've got Utah, Oregon State 7-2, and Washington State. They're down there at 4-5, but they started off strong. So this is going to be a good test for Washington. Utah is hot and cold, but I think at home I like Washington.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although Utah's got a great, I like their coach. I think he does a great job for where he's at. You know.
Yeah. No,
when I think of Utah, I think of, you know, mountains and nothing out there, because I've traveled out there and I've traveled for hours and I couldn't find a gas station, and I started shaking and getting worried, you know. I got little kids in the car, no gas, but I didn't realize all that, you know. But he's all kidding aside, he's done a great job out there. So
he has. I
would have to go with Washington as well. Like I said before, these boys are excited about getting into the playoffs, and they're gonna not play a notch higher than what they are right now. So
I agree. I think we're going to see them turn the heat up a little bit. This game is going to be an interesting game. You just talked about him. We've got Ole Miss, number 9, And again, they've only got one loss. I don't think they've got a chance to get in because they lost to Alabama. I believe they beat LSU. But they're going to, again, if Georgia gets through this game, Georgia is 10.5-point favorites. If they beat them by the spread after what they did against Missouri, next week I may have to go back to Georgia. But they're kind of like Michigan. Michigan's got Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Some of these teams are getting the strongest part of their schedule, and if somebody like Georgia, because after Mississippi, they let me see here, they got Tennessee, and then Georgia Tech. You're right. These teams are now turning it up a notch. And if they get through these schedules, we're going to have some really good conference championship games.
Oh, absolutely. And, Ole Miss, like we said before, it's a hard place to win. But Lane Kiffin, he's a great coach, man. His personality is a little strange, but I'd like to hang out with him for a day or play golf with him or something, see how he ticks. But the dude knows some football, man. So it could be an upset. You never know. You never know how that ball is shaped so weird, and it hits the ground. It bounces different ways. It's not like a basketball that bounces right back in your hand. That thing bounces around. So whoever makes the less penalties, I think will probably win that game. I like Georgia.
I do too.
But
I do too.
I'm worried about Lane Kiffin, man, because he's a good coach. He's a good commander, man. He's doing his homework.
Past couple of weeks on College Game Day, they've mic'd him up as they were out there practicing pregame, and he's walking on the sidelines, mic'd up on his iPhone, and he's talking to Kirk Herbstreit and all those guys. He's just going to tell it like it is. I mean, I remember when he was at Tennessee, I used to just hate him, but the more I listen and watch and see how his kids react to him, hats off to anybody that just says, you know what, I don't need you. I've got my guys playing. I kind of like that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's different. If he'd have stayed at Tennessee, he would probably, win the SEC championship by now. You
never know.
Guy, I mean, but he had to go to USC and got fired there, and had to go to Nick Saban Rehabilitation Center. And had a second chance.
Nick Saban rehab. The last game I'm going to look at. And then we're going to talk about our state teams. USC, man, what a disappointment. I don't know. 7-3. They go to Oregon. Oregon is 15-point favorites. I'm like you. I think Oregon is licking their chops. I think they're going to maul over. They've got, let me look here real quick. After USC, Arizona State, they've won 2 games. Oregon State 7-2. That's going to be, I think Oregon State might have beat them last year. I'm trying to remember if they did or not. I don't think Oregon's going to drop this. And the way USC has been playing, I think they're going to, what do they say, Coach? Warm those buses up early?
Yeah. I've been in a couple games where I wanted to leave at halftime. A little embarrassing, But USC, man, back in the day, they dominated the West Coast. It's just I don't know. They just well, they got a new coach, but I think he'll develop that program.
I think so. I just thought with Williams coming back as quarterback, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. But again, I got to say, they top to bottom. If they had one of those weekends like we do in basketball where everybody from the Pac-12 plays everybody from another conference, I like the Pac-12. I mean, Washington, Oregon, even USC, Oregon State, Utah, Arizona's playing some good ball. You see, I mean, who would have thought? I guess they're going to say, listen, this is our last dance. We're going to make the best of it. I still don't know what's going to happen to Washington State and Oregon State, but I guess they'll figure something out for next year.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, let's take a look. Let's look at our state teams real quick. We talked about FSU. They're 9-0. Miami, North Alabama. Again, I know they've got 2 rivalry games. Maybe Florida, if they drop them, and we'll talk about them in a second, maybe if they drop the next couple and he can get them fired up for last game if they don't go to a bowl game. But on paper, I don't see – I think it's going to be FSU and Louisville in the ACC championship game.
I think you're right.
I don't see anybody stopping them.
They're too strong. The 2 strong teams there.
Miami is 6-3. They've got FSU, then they got Louisville, and then Boston College. I mean, I think at worst they should go 7-5. He's had a tough road down there. I think he's in his 3rd year. I think next year there's going to be some I like the coach. I like Cristobal. I think he's from that area. They're feeling some pains like us Florida Gator fans are.
Yeah, he just made that one bad decision. He should be 7-3. Or should have ran the clock out. But
what are they? He's a knee away from 7-2, actually, right?
Yeah, 7-2. Actually, yeah.
I don't know. That's so. At least Miami's bowl eligible. I don't see them winning their next 2 games. And listen, Boston College isn't a pushover. Let me go back to ACC. Boston College. What are they at? Yeah, 6-3. So Miami better, they're bowl eligible. The question is now they're looking at which bowl and how much money they're going to make. Next, I got UCF. Listen, hats off. UCF won their first conference game. They had to beat one of the other new teams. Doesn't matter. They beat Cincinnati. And I think they beat them 28-26. Oklahoma State, it's going to be a tough matchup this weekend. Texas Tech, they should beat Houston. I think they got a good shot at winning 2 out of 3 and getting bowl eligible.
Yeah, UCF, my golf coach, Harry W. Johnson, he's a big fan of UCF. He went to FTU. He's an older fellow. And then they changed the name to UCF, and he roots for him. But, I went to FTU, and I also – we didn't have a football team, so I don't root for him. But that being said, UCF could be a major contender. I mean, what kid wouldn't want to go to UCF? Beautiful campus, beautiful facilities. You got Orlando there. You got downtown Disney. You got the beach. It's a neat location. And they've got a winning coach. They've got a coach that won a national championship, so he knows what he's doing.
Right, and I agree. I've mentioned before, young man at Rockledge, number 1 ranked, I think, safety in the nation, had committed to Georgia. I was at Rockledge subbing last year when helicopter came in and Kirby Smart was on it. Just double checking. A couple months later, he flips. Him and another young man from Rockledge are, again, nothing signed yet, but have committed to UCF. And like you and I have talked, that's a big difference because now you've got all this local talent in Central Florida that now you're in a Power 5. Now you can go to the college. And again, no disrespect to UCF. I'm actually a graduate of UCF. I spent more time at Florida, but I got my degree at UCF. I wasn't real pleased when they put the banner up because, we could have a whole show, including my little Virginia Military Institute out of Lexington, Virginia, of how many schools have finished undefeated and not won a championship because we voted on it. But now's their time. Now you can prove it. And I think you're going to see, just like you said, Coach, you're going to see that recruiting go up because now they can sell. This is who we're going to play. You're going to travel. We got a legitimate chance. We don't have to be the best group of 5. We have a chance to go. So I'm like you. I think I like the coach. He did a great job at Auburn, as we know. And I think looking at those 3 games, I think they're going to get bowl eligible, and I think they're going to get a good and make some waves.
Yeah, I think Gus Malzahn's done a great job. He's a winner. The thing that I'm seeing right now, Billy, I mean, it's a topic for another time, but the NIL and the transfer portal and the money offered to these athletes, that's going to make a big difference. Whoever's got the most cash is probably going to be, outside of Texas A&M, who spent a lot of money. I may be talking crazy here, but I think it's gonna change the atmosphere or of the entire college football game. I mean, if a kid is in Rockledge, he's a 5-star, and UCF's going to offer him $2 or $3 million, and nobody else is going to give him that much money. He would go there. It'd be crazy not to. So his family can watch him play, just drive an hour over. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. With a few more years here, the NIL and also the transfer portal.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. And a good friend of mine is starting a group over in Orlando, and I know him real well, quality individual, and I know they're going to do it the right way. But I can't help but think, and we talked about this yesterday, if I got a son that's a 4-star, 5-star, and he's got coaches calling me, you don't think that money topic is going to come up during that conversation? And if it does, how does that not dip into the recruiting? It's going to make an effect whether it was intended to or not. And we talked about this even at the high school level. God bless them, but if you're looking at a kid, whether, I don't care what county it's in, I don't care what state it's in, you're going to have kids call kids. So there's going to be ways. And the other thing, though, I think it really is more important, and you brought this up yesterday, is with the portal. All of a sudden, you get a good signing class in, you're starting to look 2 or 3 years ahead, and then all of a sudden next year, half of them you keep rebuilding. That's almost, I think, as much as of a negative as the money.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's just a totally different scenario now. I mean, when you recruited a kid, he usually stayed with you for 4 years,
Right.
And it had to be a lot easier than what it is now. I mean, a kid might get mad because he didn't get enough playing time, or whatever. And you can't blame the kid, and I'd take the money, and I would, if I wasn't getting the playing time, or it felt like, I wasn't being treated right, I'd take off too, man. I'd play the game. It's like, PGA and Live Golf, you pay me $125 million. Where do I sign?
We've created that avenue that it's easy to jump ship, and you're right. Part of me is like, well, you can't blame them. And we talked about this yesterday. Where does the education piece come in? When I left Gainesville and started working full time and changed schools to UCF, they had a minimum requirement of like 30 hours. Because like we talked yesterday, they're not going to say, oh, Bill just needs 6 hours. Oh, yeah, we'll give you 6 hours. We'll give you the diploma. No. If we're going to give you a diploma, you've got to spend some time here. We got people that are even some of these college basketball young ladies, 4 teams in 4 years. Where does that education piece come into play?
Right.
So I'm like you. The money is one thing, but, not being able to look at a plan with the group that you have, Florida on paper, it looks like they got one of the top 2 or 3 signing, but are they all going to be there in 3 or 4 years? We used to talk about how many left after 3 years to go pro. Now we're talking about how many leave after 1 or 2 years to go somewhere else.
Well, you made a key point there, Bill. You said the players talk, they're texting each other and they're talking. So, kid may say, hey, Tom, you need to come with us, man. We're going to have a championship team. Come with us. That's the way it was with Tim Tebow in Florida. All these great athletes went to Florida because Tim Tebow went there.
Right.
It wasn't because of Meyer and all. I mean, he was a good coach. Obviously a good coach at that time. But these kids went there because Tim Tebow did, and they knew they could win a national or had the opportunity to win a national championship. So that plays a big role too. So that's a good point there, Bill.
Yeah, they do. So speaking of Gainesville, that's the last game we're going to talk about. That was a tough loss. I mean, there's no 2 ways around it. I'm looking at this schedule, that might be the toughest 3 games that anybody in the country has, with LSU that is at 19, Missouri. I know they're at 14 and FSU is at 4. I don't know. Are they going to upset one of those two teams on the road, or are they going to play good against FSU at home? I don't know, Coach.
If I was a betting man, I would say they're not going to win another game this year. I was listening to Shane Matthews, his show.
Oh yeah.
This morning, and Shane said, he's okay with the offense, but the defense and the special teams is the problem there. And I agree with that. I mean, they had a mix up on the special team when they sent the kicking team out in the last game. And the defense, they haven't stopped anybody all night. I could probably take my 3-year-old grandson, and he could probably come up with a better game plan. That quarterback for Arkansas, that kid can run, man. I would not want to get in his way. But we all knew, Mark Elliott, who used to be my boss, he was up in the stands, sitting in the seats that we should have been sitting in. He said, well, he's going to run the ball. You'll put 8 men in the box, But Florida didn't do that. They were playing the pass. And he wasn't a great passer. He's not a great passer. But I knew he was going to run the ball. And he beat Florida with his legs,
Well, it's funny. And, the other young man in the backfield is from Rockledge, Rocket Sanders.
Yeah.
He's Rockledge. And like you said, they 3 plays and they won the game. He reminded me, I can't remember his last name. He was a quarterback at LSU a couple years ago. Big guy, huge. And that's what, it's funny you said that. I think if Florida could read their signs and it said he's going to run, it wouldn't have mattered, So,
probably not.
No.
And then Florida was missing their stud linebacker too.
Well, they had 3 guys out. I didn't realize that. So, and I think they're the 3rd youngest team in the nation. So, we've talked about this before. We're just going to, if we can get that signing class, all these kids are all young kids. And we just got to hope for the best. I just hope if they don't make a bowl, that these last 3 games, at least they have a good showing. But they got their work cut out. I mean, a night game at LSU on a Saturday. I tell you what, you could throw Ohio State down there. You could probably put Alabama down there. I'm not betting against LSU at night on a Saturday at home.
Oh no, Coach Kelly. Coach Kelly, he looks like a mild-mannered guy,
Oh, I've seen him fired up.
Oh yeah. Coaches, when they get in that locker room at halftime, man, they can make they can make you shake in your boots if you're a player, and they can also make some great adjustments,
Right.
But to play LSU at night, I don't know. At LSU, that's going to be a tough game. That's going to be a tough one.
And Missouri, like I say, they're sitting at 7-2. They're playing some really good ball. So, Florida's got the work cut out for them. Stranger things have happened, and we'll have to see what it is. But
you know what? What I always say, Billy, not to interrupt you, but what I always say, winning is a habit, and so is losing. So if you get into that habit of losing,
no,
it's not a good thing.
No, I agree. So, well, any last words of wisdoms? Anything college football? Like I say, we're kind of we agree on FSU, and we agree on somebody from the SEC. I'm switching over to Bama for now. We agree with somebody from the Big 12, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington. Again, Washington, Oregon, they've got some stout schedules coming up. Michigan and Georgia. But if Georgia runs the table with Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, and looks strong, and Alabama's only got Kentucky, Chattanooga, and Auburn, Georgia might be going into that game with a little better feel because of who they've got scheduled at the end. But it's going to be fun. You know what? The way things are going, it might be none of those 4 teams. We might have Louisville, Penn State, Texas. I don't know.
I wouldn't go that far, Billy.
The last thing I want to say though, real quick, is and here's the part about next year. Next year we're going to go to 12, So now next year, we're going to start having a lot of teams that have lost 2 games. We might have an Oklahoma State in there. I just hope it doesn't get to where the first or second round we're just blowing people out. I just hope that by opening it to 12 games. But yeah, that's my fear, is those first few games are going to just be practice sessions.
Yeah. And, the sad part about it, these boys are beat up,
Yeah.
They're beat up going into that. And you got injuries and,
right.
Playing those extra games.
Right.
That could hurt you if you got some injury, key player hurt, if your quarterback goes down or something like that, then, it could dictate the outcome.
Yeah, I think so too. So, all right, Coach. Well, listen, as always, I appreciate you joining me on the Press Box. I will see you Friday night. Looking forward to announcing the should be a good game. It was a 1-point difference about a month ago, and looking forward to seeing you as O'Galley hosts Merritt Island Friday night at 7:30. So, for Doug Cook, I'm Bill Maharis. Thanks for watching. This is Pressbox Overtime. Remember, sports, yeah, it's more than just a game. We'll see you, Coach.
See you.